Hey everyone, today we have a Samsung refrigerator with a very common problem. The ice maker is not working due to frost buildup on the ice maker, and today we're going to try a new, very oddball fix to get this problem taken care of. We're going to install a heater kit into the ice maker. Now, if your refrigerator doesn't look quite like this, it's okay. If the indoor water and ice doesn't look like this, it's again okay. If you open the door and you see either an Ice Max or Ice Master ice bucket, then this modification will work. You want to make sure that it doesn't have the bulb out front or a different style ice maker, because I don't know if this will necessarily work for those, but I know that this fix will work for this type. So let's get into the ice maker and get this modification done, because it's really, really neat.
The first thing that we want to do is remove the ice bucket from the unit. To do that, you should simply need to push the bucket upward a little bit and then outward. However, there's a very high likelihood that there's going to be a ton of ice buildup, so it won't be this simple as you see on footage. There are two ways you can generally solve this. The first way is to run a forced defrost on the ice unit itself. To do this, it will vary from model to model on your Samsung refrigerator, and I will include the links to the videos that I've done using the forced defrost mode on a few different types in the description for you. Now, if you do the forced defrost properly, it's very possible that it can remove enough ice to where you can remove the bucket. However, that won't work all the time. Chances are, if it's really bad, there's going to be too much ice in this cabinet, and that won't solve it. But before you take extreme measures to remove the ice maker, the best thing you can use is a garment steamer. This will gently and cleanly remove the ice from your unit. If you use a hairdryer or heat gun, it will likely warp and destroy the plastic of the ice maker housing, and this fix will then be useless. The ice maker will be so warped it won't work at all. Once the ice maker is removed, then I would take the time to inspect the ice bucket for any damage anywhere on the unit, as well as the gasket between the door of the refrigerator and the ice maker itself. Now, if there's damage or obstructions to either of these things, chances are that is a major part of the source of your frost buildup, and I would suggest dealing with the seal. Also check the bucket for cracks. At any rate though, let's go back to the ice maker. First, go ahead and unplug the unit from the wall. Then there are two screws to remove from the ice maker housing. The first one is to the left side of the ice maker, which contains the wire cluster. The second screw is one on the ice maker itself at the plastic bottom to the right side. Once both screws are out, you can remove the plastic piece on the left by sliding it forward and then out. Once that plate is off, you need to press in on the clip holding the frontmost wire harness in place and then pull the harness out from the ice maker housing. Next, you want to take a screwdriver and press on the left side of the ice maker. There's a small retaining tab that is triangular that holds this bottom piece in place. Press it and shift this housing to the right, and then it will allow the flap to slide down and pivot out of the way. Once the flap is down, there is a small metal tube between the ice maker and this plastic piece. Use a flat-bladed screwdriver and gently pry it downward, but be very careful not to stab the metal housing as it holds refrigerant. Once you have this piece pressed down, you can press in on the tab of the top of the ice maker, then slide the housing forward and then out. Once you have the housing out, you can inspect the area for any other upgrades or replacements that you'd like to do. And I do have other videos covering other modifications you can do to this refrigerator, which involves removing the auger and a few other parts, just in case you want to do some other things and be really complete with this job. Back to the ice maker though. With the ice maker out, take a Phillips head screwdriver and remove the screws on the rear of the ice maker where the drain tube is. There are one on each side of the ice maker that holds this bottom piece in place. With the bottom piece fully detached from the ice maker, there are 4 or 5 tabs around the edge of the plastic that keeps this metal in place. You need to press outward on the plastic tabs and work your way around the edges to remove the metal piece and separate it from the plastic. Next, you want to do the same thing with the foam that was behind the metal. This will be a bit easier to separate though. Once you have everything separated, the secret here is we want to modify this by installing a heater into this plastic tray. There are a few different kinds that you could fit and use in this bottom housing, but the key is something that only uses about 5 to 8 watts and is 120 volts. Supco makes one that would fit in this, which is the SH221. You would place it diagonally like you see here in the video, with the wires sticking out near the drain piece on the back side of the housing like you see here. But since I run an appliance store, I actually have a modified Icemaker drain heater that I had custom fitted for a Samsung Icemaker like this. It's the same wattage as the Supco SH221, but it fills the entire plastic tray a little bit better and is slightly shorter. I think it works better. If you have a counter depth fridge and Icemaker, it is likely you'd have to consider something different than the SH221 because it is much longer than what you would need. I'm not sure what other alternatives are out there, but I had other pads that we could size to fit a counter depth Icemaker, but I'll have a link to the description for both of these style heater pads and the SH221 in the description, so you can choose what best works for you. Although any of these Icemaker heaters have insulating foil in them, I'm going to go ahead and add some more HVAC tape, as we're not going to reinstall the foam insulation due to how thick it is in addition to this foil heater. Once you have some tape on it, I'm going to go ahead and put the metal back into place and snap it back into the bottom of the plastic piece. Then I'm going to go ahead and join the bottom plastic piece back to the rest of the Icemaker housing. There are holes that the screws were in that you need to line up between the metal piece that we just reinstalled and the hole on the Icemaker itself. Go ahead and install the two screws. You can see how they attach on both areas here in the video. Once you have that done, take the heater wires and carefully route them like you see here on the video, up the left side and then behind the Icemaker. They will fit behind these plastic tabs really well, and then sandwich between the metal ice tray and the top of the plastic housing, and this will work similar regardless of the style of Samsung Icemaker you have. Next, I'm going to take more of that HVAC tape that we used just a few moments ago, and use it to secure the wires on the Icemaker through this lining between the metal and plastic of the Icemaker. Near the end, there's a small hole that needs cut out to allow airflow into the Icemaker, so you need to peel the tape back to find it. Just make sure to cut it with a knife or other cutting device. In my case, the wires weren't completely flush between the metal and plastic. I took the tape off and reseated them, and now it looks really, really good, like there isn't a huge bundle of wires on the side of the Icemaker. Make sure that the wires come out near the front of the Icemaker where the rest of the wire trunk is. Next, let's look at the wire trunk and snip the tape that holds all the wires in place. There may be one or two sets of tape or maybe even more, and it's your call if you need to remove one or both depending on how easy it is to work with these wires. Next, spread the wire cluster out. You will see many small wires, and then there are going to be 3 wires that are much thicker wires. One will almost always be green, which is the ground, and then 2 other collars. And these collars may vary from Icemaker to Icemaker, and these are the ones we want to tap into for the heater. They could be gray and pink like this, or they could be different. Now, on this other Icemaker, this counter depth Icemaker that I have, the ground wire is yellow, which I found strange, but if you hold the harness on both of these, you'll see 3 empty slots that no wires are in, and then 3 thick ones you want to splice into the first 2. Next, you want to use a wire splicer that can tap into these thick connections that doesn't take up a lot of room. These wires are between a 14 and 16 AWG, and for the installation I'm doing here, I'm using a blue 804 3M Scotch lock connector. We've used these in other videos on Samsung fridges, and the big advantage I like with these is they come with dielectric grease pre-installed to make sure that moisture doesn't get into the splicer, ruining the wires on the Icemaker. So if you use a different style, make sure you have some sort of silicone or dielectric sealant so that moisture doesn't get in and ruin the connections over time. To attach the Scotch lock connector, I open the flap up on the side of the connector and then slide the pink wire into the Scotch lock housing. It's a little snug, so I need to pull the tap out just a little bit more with the pliers, but it should fit really well into the connector. And I can even see the pink color of the connector kind of peering through the grease. Next, I want to trim the white heater wire slightly. I don't need to expose the wire once we trim it, as it just presses into the Scotch lock and not through the end of the connector. It does stop inside the housing. Once you have everything in place, you will take the little metal blade and crimp it with some pliers. These pliers are definitely overkill, but once pressed in, this makes a beautiful, very snug connection. Now, if you have a multimeter, you could verify the connection is properly terminated by pressing a lead on the side of the bare wire of the Icemaker, and then you could tap it either to the wire harness on the Icemaker or the metal blade on the Scotch lock. It's your choice. But depending on what kind of heater you use, the ohm value you will get is quite high. This one was around 3,300 ohms. Once I tested it, I'm going to go ahead and seal the connector by pressing down on the blue flap, and it will snap into place. You can use your fingers, but sometimes you may have to use pliers to secure it down, and it will vary from attempt to attempt. Next, we want to splice onto the gray wire. The key here is to do the connection lower or higher than where the first one is, so they're not side by side when you retape the trunk. This will make it easier to put the Icemaker back in when we put it in the fridge. I barely need to snip the second wire on this connection since it's going to be lower on the cluster. We're going to go ahead and install the Scotch lock the same way. Open the flap on the side of the Scotch lock, slide the gray wire into the unit, and then fold up that side on the Scotch lock. And if you use them, you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. It feels like it almost clicks into place. And again, you see the grease bulge out of the housing with that gray wire beneath it, which means that it's sealed against ice and moisture and in the right place. Next, go ahead and put the white heater wire into the Scotch lock. You'll see the white jacket at the end of the splicer, and then we're going to go ahead and crimp this one with the oversized pliers. And again, everything looks really good. I really like these connectors for this job. But there are others you can use too. Just make sure they're very small to fit back into the Icemaker housing. I didn't do a great job on where the connections were seated, as it looks like they're more side by side than what I initially thought, but they should go in okay. Lastly, I'm going to go ahead and add tape back to the wire connections to make sure the cluster is tight into the Icemaker box. You could use zip ties, but this worked pretty well. Now it's time to reinstall the Icemaker to the refrigerator cabinet. To install the Icemaker back into the fridge, slowly navigate it into the top of the housing, placing the middle of the refrigerant loop in between the Icemaker and the bottom plastic flap. It only slots in one way. There are two small fingers at the very top of the Icemaker housing that the Icemaker will rest on. It may take a moment to orient the Icemaker properly to get it on, but it kind of snaps into place. Next, go ahead and pivot and press the plastic Icemaker bottom to lock it into place. Remember, there is a finger on the left side of the Icemaker, and I had a little bit of difficulty to put this into place on the camera, but after a moment or two, it did finally lock into place. Next, go ahead and reinstall the wire harness to the front of that harness connector. It's easier to do without a camera, but with the new splices in place, it could be a little bit more snug, and that's something you do have to watch out for. But once the harness is snapped into place, make sure that these wires again fit snugly within the plastic housing. There is a plastic finger or two that the wire cluster will hide behind so it doesn't stick out, and it's very important you put them in snugly. This is how the unit looks after I have put them back in. From here, go ahead and reinstall the plastic cover. The key is here that there are 2 or 3 fingers on this cover housing that you need to slot into place to make sure that it is totally flush with the left side of the Icemaker. It'll snap more or less into place, and it can take a little bit of wiggling to get this to slot correctly because, again, more wires are in this now than what there was, but it wasn't too hard. Once it's snapped in, reinstall the screw that keeps the cover in place. Now we want to go ahead and install the second screw that's in the Icemaker cover at the bottom of the Icemaker itself. I noticed that it was a little difficult to put the screw in. If you're wondering why we did this, your Samsung Icemaker actually has a heater right here that runs at the bottom of this metal unit. When your ice is frozen in the tray, the coil heats up and these small plastic fingers rotate to scoop the ice cubes up and out of the housing into your ice bucket. When you have this new heater installed, the bottom plate will now heat up too, removing any frost or ice that is gathered on the bottom of the plate. And since we splice the wires to run them in tandem with this main heater, it's only going to run when the ice gets scooped out, so it's not running constantly, melting your ice in your bucket. Now that we have the Icemaker back installed, everything should be working quite a bit better on this refrigerator now. Once you have the Icemaker out, I think it's also a good idea to do some of the other things that we suggest in other videos on YouTube, such as the drain tube heater, the Y-clips, and the plastic retainer. I have another video for those things, but I'm really excited about this modification. We've been seeing it used quite a while in the field, and it seems to work really, really well, getting rid again of that ice issue. I will have a link to all of the tools that we use to do this, probably also a kit as well, because we are able to simply modify some heaters that we already had in stock at our business. But I hope this video helps you out and you have a great day. Bye.